Morning, Jim. Good afternoon, Eric.
Good day, Stephen.
How are things on your side of the pond?
All good. All good. I was in the UK for about a week, and fall and autumn is coming on strong, and it's getting cold and dark.
Where are you now?
What's that?
Where are you now?
Oh, back in the south of France. And so I come back down south of France, I'm like, oh, it's still summer.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Because here we went from this morning was 3 degrees Celsius,
Oh,
and the day before was 29 Celsius.
oh goodness. Okay.
No such thing as global warming.
Global weirding.
So we went like overnight to fall. All the leaves said, "What the?" And they all got scared and turned colors.
Yeah. Well, it's
Hey,
yeah.
Jim. Sinclair, two Jims.
Steven, how you doing, buddy?
Good. How are you, sir?
I am well, thank you.
Excellent. Good afternoon, Nikki.
Hi, Jim.
Hi, chaps. How are you guys?
Iggy, hello.
We almost have enough people except the commander-in-chief.
Isn't he away on holiday?
Is he?
Yeah.
I thought he did that already. I know
Who's
last
that,
time he was
Wenjing?
away in China
Yeah.
doing a presentation.
He
But-
said for the next 2 weeks he would be
Oh,
on tour.
excellent. So you're in charge, Nikki.
Definitely done.
Yeah, but you
I'll
could do
open
your
up
you
the
could do
wiki
your harms
page
thing now,
and
right?
sorry?
You could use the time as a working session for your harm stuff.
For the harm stuff, yeah.
Being harmed
I did.
way.
We could have a look at the analysis that I did of the different projects in the space and what's missing in terms of that human connection piece.
Sure.
And then I can explain about the work in decentralized trust graph. Is that what you're talking about?
Sure, that could be it. Let's say I'm talking about that.
Yeah, I mean,
Well, I have
obviously
missed
from my
most of the first meeting of decentralized graph I missed, and the last one I was only in for like the first maybe half hour. So yeah, it would be great if you caught up on that. Would be nice.
Yeah.
Also,
Okay.
I guess I mean I'm not a chair, but I don't think it matters. But someone should pull up the agenda and do the formalities.
Yeah, let me find the
I
agenda.
don't even know if there's probably isn't an agenda. We could just create one while we're talking.
Okay.
Do you want to do it, Eric, or
Yep.
do you know where it is?
On it. Meeting minutes.
Seems every time you use Confluence, it changes.
10:02. I'll make a copy of this one. So I'm just going to copy. Copy. Anybody help with the copy? Where do we copy?
It's changed recently.
Making copies.
We can copy.
That's a throwback.
Like chopping broccoli.
Chopper broccoli.
Chopping broccoli. Okay. Well, I can't find it, so let me see here. Maybe it's over here.
I'm looking too.
Copy. No, duplicate. There it is. Okay. Duplicate. And we're on. Let me change the date. And and publish. All right, and then I'll put it in the chat.
Great.
And edit. Okay. Nikki.
Over 5th or 6th try. So I'm slowing down. Maybe I'm going to stay more closer to my community, so I'm not going to spend as much maybe on travel and other things. So we actually see spending start to decrease. Actually, as those demands are what I'm really interested in. You know, also,
Jim Mason.
some things making it hard to be on a plane.
Jim. Yeah, go on mute. Thanks.
All right, so we start. I will get these notes up. Take
You want
notes.
to try live docs?
Oh, you want to
I haven't tried it yet.
what's the question, Stephen?
I don't know. Confluence has this pop-up for design for collaboration. Bring in relevant information with Rovo AI. Let's just go old school.
Jim Claire. I got 3 Jim St. Clairs here on the Trust over IP wiki. I'm choosing.
Oh golly. Can you see the email addresses?
Let me see. Profile. This one is. I don't know if it makes a difference. No, it's just in the notes. It says at Jim St. Clair, so I don't think it'll make a difference.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah. Mac.
Yeah, the configuration of the whole Linux Foundation setup makes it difficult that if you don't remove yourself before losing an email address and access to it, then you will perpetually be a ghost.
Yeah. I think Drummond has a few of those floating around as well.
Yeah. Otherwise, you have to go to the admin for housekeeping, and I haven't done that. So
They're pretty good, I have to say. The Linux Foundation folks are very, very responsive. Not just, oh yeah, I'll look into it responsive, but actually make things work.
yeah. The LFDT team's pretty good.
Yeah.
Okay, so I've got the meeting notes up. I'm not sharing my screen, but would you like me to do that? And then
That would be great.
okay,
I
let me
think
share it.
it's nice if we follow along.
Yep. Okay. Did I get everybody? Am I missing anybody? I think that's good. And then we'll do we're into the antitrust policy notice and the trust over IP policy. And our AIM working group IPR policy is just a click away if you want to read that. And after that, we can go to any new members. I think we recognize everybody here. I've seen Kevin joined, but I don't know if I've met Kevin or if he's introduced himself. But Kevin, if you do want to say hi, and now's the time to do it.
Okay, yeah, thanks. I'm a friend of Drummond. I'm fairly new to first person project and trust over IP. I'm hoping to get involved more with the standards. I love what y'all have done so far. So hopefully that's good enough. I don't want to hold you all up. I'm just here
That's
to
great. Yeah, no, thanks for joining. And I think that's everybody. We've covered everybody. Mackie, Jen, okay. And then this is where we go with news. I mean, Stephen, you want to lead? I'm just going down the agenda, but this is where we talk about any news to share.
Yeah, I don't remember that one, quite honestly, but it's maybe a couple weeks old. So that's the extent of my knowledge. I honestly don't remember.
All right, I'll try. Yeah, but yeah, this is old news, but does anybody have, this is the time to share any sort of latest AI or
You can leave that mapping of the agentic AI space in because that's what I'll
this one?
include in the discussion today. And I put in the Discord channel, OpenID have published identity management for agentic AI paper.
Mm-hmm.
So I expect that to be the usual IAM stuff,
Yeah.
but they have identified, and I haven't read the whole paper. But they've identified this problem about scaling human in the loop, which I found quite interesting. Particularly because one of the outputs of the research that we did into it, like this entangling social design methodology, was one of our conclusions was that you could use agents as representatives for customers, for people in the loop, in your design processes and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously that's not, but that's a way, and one of the main reasons for doing that was a way of scaling participatory and social design methods, but it may hold some of the keys to the solution here. The other thing is they're coming across that problem that's been kind of here in the community for a while of it's all very well giving individuals control, but if they've got to make thousands of like decisions every day and ask for their permission on things, then that's counterintuitive. That works against their control because it's just a blizzard. There's too much noise. So anyhow, I put it in the Slack there.
So sorry, just so I understand, you're saying that you can use agents to represent personas when you're going through a
Yeah,
product or.
that was one of the conclusions in the paper. So we produced the relationship guides, but we also produced a document that looked at the methodology, an experience report, they call it in academia. And they could also, agents could also represent systems. And you know how, I mean, I'm just putting it out there, I'm not an engineer, as you know, but you know how you have like dual coding in some agile processes.
Mm-hmm.
Wouldn't it be great if you could also have the customer just like sitting there responding to you? You could ask them questions like, do you want the button to be green or blue? And
Mm-hmm.
equally, when you're doing like real social design, participatory design with people, you could have agents representing systems,
Mm-hmm.
saying you can't have a purple button, it's blue or green, that kind of thing. I mean, I'm oversimplifying, but representing the constraints of the systems or the legal and regulatory requirements that are at play. And this could accelerate good quality design. Also, if you're taking an entangled post anthropocentric approach, then you might have agents representing aspects of nature. So there's already a project in Mexico where they use sensor data and things to represent the voice of the river for policy making and things like that. So you're designing a new factory, it's near to a river and a forest, and you could have agents representing biodiversity, the whole nature on the board kind of movement. So it was
Mm-hmm.
just for future research.
Yep.
How could we kind of turn this on its head and say, how can agents promote the human in our systems design? And instead of human in the loop, through their representation, trained on data sets from customer research or environmental research, for example, or from, in fact, IoT sensors. How could that kind of put the human interests and environmental interests everywhere in the kind of DevSecOps cycle, I guess? you know,
Mhm.
throughout the life cycle, particularly in things like ML ops, where you're trying to get rid of bias or you're tweaking models or things like that. Just it's a future research thing. I'll put the link to the experience report in the chat.
Great, thank you.
That's awesome. And Nikki, that's such a great description because it comes on the heels of being in this morning's security and trustworthiness working group meeting at the Digital Twin Consortium. And I've been participating for about 3 years in the DTC. What I have found is that when I was talking about it in 2022 and talking about a stack associated with it, where it was going, we were still pretty much pre-GPT in the market and pre-AI and certainly pre-AI agents. And really in the last 6 months, there's been, in my opinion, much more confluence around the substance of a digital twin and the National Academy of Sciences definitions for that relative to agents and agent autonomy that embody exactly what you're talking about. So your description of that biome ecosystem sort of model is exactly what we talk about in the digital twin side, but this is approaching it with the AI agent agentic framework in mind for the anthropomorphism, which is really what's embodying the virtual model of a physical system, or a digital model of a virtual system, and then saying, okay, what are the key components to that architecturally, and where are we getting trust and safety out of it?
I mean, actually, that's my main work at the moment, is in local digital twins. So we should catch up offline, Jim, because I think there could be some interesting crossovers. It's all about sustainability and like collective resilience, and we're actually building some a consortium to respond to a series of calls in Europe at the moment, and we're starting to try and bake in things like TRQP into the interoperability layer, which is obviously really complex when it comes to digital twins. But I don't want to suck up time in this conversation, but
Because you'll get me
We,
going and then I won't stop.
well,
yeah,
we've got
it's
time.
such a fascinating domain, and I think like it's new levels of complexity to what we deal with in identity.
Yeah, it is, and the answer is yes. I'll reach out to you. I'm also trying to, from the outside the EU, see what next steps are for the Edith project, which is no longer funded, and the virtual human twin framework work that was delivered in draft that should be finalized anytime for
Yeah,
EP, and how we tie this all together. So yeah, let's chat.
yeah. And actually, agentic AI is really the main frontier we need to broach here. And there are some really interesting research strands that touch on some of the work we've been doing here around when you make these these digital twins interoperable and interconnected, which is like one of the European goals. There are all sorts of ecosystem considerations in terms of harms. Like, let's say you have a data poisoning event in a data space around a data set connected with CO2 calculations. The impacts could flow through that interconnected network in unforeseen ways and change behaviors on the ground and have all sorts of real world impact. It's very interesting.
Can I just ask, sorry, I don't know how to raise my hand when I'm sharing the screen, but can I just ask where is in these scenarios, where is the autonomy of the agent? Is it sort of, because in some ways, I'm just envisioning it as an AI powered sort of system that responds based on all the context that has been fed so that you can, have back and forth, but that AI isn't actually autonomous. And so where in these scenarios are we talking about sort of giving that an agentic capability so that it's making decisions?
Yeah, Eric.
Well, sorry, go ahead, Jim.
Oh, I'm sorry, real quick, and happy to turn over you. What I would ask the autonomy and the higher levels autonomy come into the model is because the National Academy of Sciences in their tome on digital twins defines in order to be a digital twin, you have to be able to be responsive and predictive to dynamic inputs. So it's not a static, hey, here's my model. I'm going to feed it 1, 2, and 3 and see what the change is. It has to be responsive to whatever the physical system is providing for inputs to the virtual system. And as they dynamically change, as a result, change the output of the digital twin. So
Right.
the degree of autonomy, I think, has been undefined or is not yet defined because there also aren't definitions of business or data science requirements for what that dynamicism is for real-time input. I'm sorry,
Right.
Nikki.
And then wait, sorry, and then just to follow up, and the other term was predictive, meaning it needs to predict some outcome, whether it's deterministic or probabilistic or whatever.
Yes. So the expectation of basically any digital twin, and let's say digital twin of a power plant, is I want to know how to reduce carbon emissions 15% from the current power plant activities.
Mhm.
Okay, so I'm going to change the inputs to the system X, Y, and Z, and use the digital twin to give me a predictive model of what those implications would be.
Mhm.
The digital twin work that's largely going on in the US from a biomedical research perspective is give me a different model for applications of radiotherapy for better cancer outcomes. And I have
Mhm.
a whole mass of patient data for research from an oncology standpoint. And I turn around and feed that in and say, okay, let me tweak what I'm doing from a radiotherapy standpoint in conjunction with chemotherapy inputs, plus understanding of biomic and exomic factors, et cetera, for these patients to yield a different outcome in this cancer patient digital twin.
Mhm. Okay, thank you.
And Nikki had valuable input too, so go ahead.
Go ahead, Jim Mason. I put my note in the chat.
Just real quick, the point you made, Jim, earlier about responsive and predictive, all that tells me is I've got something, anything, any smart object, doesn't have to be agentic AI or anything like that, that is just, in a sense, responsible and listening for events and providing output. For me, the one thing that's critically different about collaboration with an AI agent is what responsibilities have you assigned the AI agent for making decisions and also taking an action? So I've built some
Yeah.
simple agents for pricing purposes, but they're only recommenders. You know what I mean? They look at all the stuff you said, they do respond, they do evaluate, analyze, predict, and say, hey, based on your needs, here's a recommended price you should set for something. That's a price or recommender as an assistant, but it doesn't make decisions. It just provides analysis back, as opposed to making an operational decision. To your point, when you have a digital twin, like in my case, environmental stuff, is it actually going to take an action, or is it just going to let the human know that an action needs to be taken, kind of a thing? And then finally, have you enabled it for action? So I've built some long time ago, some IOT systems in a sense that were programmed. They weren't AI at all, but they were programmed, but they certainly took actions in the real world. You know what I mean? So it was software taking actions in a physical world. But the key to me is the decision stuff. And that's really where, and you brought up the concept of autonomy. So I think there's degrees of it. It's much like if Jim is my manager in an
Yeah.
organization, he will delegate based on my role, perhaps, some responsibilities to me, and I'll have some authority to make those decisions or take those actions. But I'm working, in a sense, under a job description and a set of governing policies that he set for me. And I think so it's not a black or white kind of a thing. It's more a matter of like, in a sense, how is this AI agent getting hired dynamically into I'll call it a job role? And some of that is dynamic.
Absolutely. That was a great description, Jim. And, because I take everything back to healthcare. So if I'm developing that cancer model, I'm going to assign levels of autonomy for decision making to agents representing the epigenetic behavior of a cancer tumor. I can't go in and limit or be the human in the loop for every protein response because that's gigabytes of data and there's just no way I can sort through it. So I'll have degrees of autonomy with agents making decisions based on that biomedical model of what I need an agent actor to be representing to do on their own so I can figure out what it means when I change drugs or change treatment, et cetera.
Yeah, so whether it's therapy, I'll call it engineering, or in my case, it might be more likely, I'll call it remote patient monitoring. The role can actually change. So as an example, think of me having a monitoring agent on your phone that's monitoring your health conditions, and I have a certain role in that. But what happens if you have a heart attack? Do I have authority to, in a sense, escalate and change my role to say, no, call for help immediately, that kind of a thing. So sometimes and I'm looking at field operations a lot where we have what I call dynamic challenges in
Yeah.
terms of you had a certain role and responsibility, but the situation in the field changes dynamically. So whether that be electric power generation or healthcare or any of that, in a sense, I'm looking at what I call the field operations models that tend to be very dynamic on trust. They're not as static, I'll say that.
That's a great example too, and it ties in with Nikki's IoT comment because if I'm modeling in a SCADA system, which is obviously a big target for digital twins, you've probably seen that. I expect the IoT or the OT devices to have a degree of autonomy about, crank up the flow, crank down the flow based on parameters, and so that autonomy has to be assigned to understand systemic impact.
Yeah, Moby, if you look at the automobile industry, I was part of Moby for a long time, and there that is nothing but a set of systems. No, there's not AI agents in the stuff we were looking at 3 or 4 years ago, but there were, to your point, complex systems that had, I'll call it large responsibilities, and they communicated in a sense, I'll call it a need to know kind of a basis to the next system, and they interacted back and forth and took whatever actions they needed to take in the vehicle. So.
Thanks, guys. Jim, what is that first thing you mentioned, the Digital Trust Convention or no, the Digital Trust
Oh, I'm sorry, Digital Twin Consortium, which
Consortium.
is it's digitaltwinconsortium.org. So it's all one word. I could throw a link in the chat if you want.
Okay. All right, great. Thank you. And thanks for that discussion because I'm always really interested on when it moves from automation to autonomy and how we sort of manage that. So thanks for all that input and insight. So we're at the half-hour point. Do we want to move to? So I'm going to erase this. This was last week's topic, I believe, with AI agent protocols over TSP. That's Wenjing, and then this use case, etc. We spoke about the trustworthy AI framework. Let me just, and then we'll go to Nikki. Let me just say that it is in the calendar. The first task force meeting next Tuesday at 4 p.m. European time. So if you go to this, sorry, I think everybody should have this. Let me put it in the link. Where are we? This is the Trust over IP calendar on the Linux Foundation platform, and you'll see it on Tuesdays. And next week, Tuesday at 4 p.m. my time. It's called Trustworthy AI Agent Framework, and that's a task force that we're spinning up, and we finally got into the calendar. And we're going to be talking about what does a framework look like for trustworthy AI agents. And there's been a lot of work done on that, and we welcome you to come and contribute and give us your thoughts and help us refine that model. So,
That's excellent. Looking forward to that.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, like getting going.
Yeah.
You've done so much already.
Yeah, no, it's gonna be fun. It's gonna be good. It's gonna be, get us thinking.
Mackie has
Okay.
his hand up.
Mackie.
Yes, so actually, yesterday the European Commission have released an Apply AI strategy. It's more of an action plan, in tandem with what they have already produced, the EU AI Act. So the purpose is, to expedite the release of, AI across different, entities and enterprises, enabling it basically through, like a laboratory they've mentioned, also through educational programs. So more, I would say, like enabling the EU ecosystem to respond quite rapidly with the AI evolution. So yeah, I think that will be an interesting one to see how it will unfold over the next period. So it was, like addressed to the European Parliament, from the EU Commission. I can also paste, the link to the document if you'd like to go through the details.
Yes, please. If you could paste that, that would be great. And then I could put that in the notes. And then we'll just go to Nikki. If you want to take us through where is it?
Yeah, let me first of all just give you a quick update. So I kind of, I feel the loss of the human experience working group, but I'm pragmatic also. And so, the reality is there's Nikki and there's lots of people all across Trust over IP who are concerned about the human factors. That's why we're all working for nothing so much. Trust is a human relationship first and foremost. So I'm going to divide my work between working with Eric on the framework and bringing in the work on socio-technical systems and the AI relationships. And I'm also going to be working in the decentralized trust graph working group. And there, what I'm doing is I'm working with Scott in the task force he's set up, which is all about risk assessment, applying his risk assessment framework. And what we're going to do is we're going to add in the human harms element and effectively use the framework we developed in the white paper to and add it, augment it in this risk assessment to produce a set of business requirements for human harms identification, prevention, the usual NIST kind of framework around that. And they'll consist of like governance requirements. And what we're hoping to do, of course, in the overall working group is influence the specs for the credentials and the protocols for exchanging those. So what this means is quite exciting, I think, is kind of operationalizing this harms framework. And the reason I'm interested is because I'm going to work in that task force to do it there. But I'm also working with a group here in the UK, you might have heard on the grapevine that our government has suddenly decided we need digital ID for kind of all the wrong reasons, in my view. But there's a big momentum. They're going to bring forward legislation. There's a consultation process. And so what I've agreed to do with a bunch of folks here in the UK, who kind of I've known for many years around identity and so forth, is do a risk assessment of the kind of so what, because all the debate is about the how. And actually, using the human harms framework, we can say, so what? So that's again, it's taking that white paper and saying, is there a method here where we can apply that framework, understand the risks to humans and societal, economic, political, etc., and make concrete recommendations to government and to industry. So that's kind of advancing the whole harms framework. And I kind of get a feeling, I don't want to document it now and here, but that framework needs to be updated with an AI framing. Now, many of the harms that were described in the document are effectively and already enabled by AI, but it's not agentic AI. And I think there are other consequences and also opportunities in terms of countermeasures and mitigations that the age of agentic AI and the agentic internet brings to bear. But that's kind of a question for another day. So I'm going to spread my time, and of course, I'm not the I'm not the guardian of, or as Drummond calls me, the spirit animal of Trust Over IP. But my efforts are going to be split across those two task forces with very specific deliverables where we're going to add the human factor, and of course there'll be kind of learnings and crossovers between the two of them.
Worthwhile. Um, I'm interested to see how that's going to work its way into these, all these documents that we have, which are so technically heavy and technically focused, and weave the human into them is going to be really interesting how that works. I mean, and then part of the question is who's the audience, right? Because we need developers to actually take on some of these safeguards and really understand what they're building,
I mean, it's a challenge. That's why the relationship guides were aimed to be a very practical guide. And we need to just think about our customer, But that's why I'm making the work at the Trust Graph group a recommendation as opposed to a guide. So we can't, I'd love to be able to do a like human experience spec. But the reality is we can't do that. Neil.
Yeah, one thing that tripped across looking at the hospitality and travel profile that I'm working on over at Diff is AI interacting with that set of data, because obviously there's going to be some extremely personal information in there, including possibly medical records or other material. And what I've been running into is discussions with teams looking to use AI, and they're going to go, so how is AI going to assess that data? And they're saying, well, we just let AI figure it out. And I go, the red flag. If you can't trace the decision-making process and how it queried the data and how it used it, it's wide open to very potentially AI doing stuff that was not the intent of the information provider, the human. If AI is using arbitrary reasoning to interpret data without any kind of traceability, then that's a massive problem.
Well, I think that's the purpose of the framework from Eric. And
Yeah.
I think we should be careful about this amorphous term of AI will do X, Y, and Z. We need to be a little bit more specific on what we mean by that, because AI is everywhere already. But AI agents and their level of autonomy is a specific and new problem to solve because, as one of the gyms said, they're making decisions. So, what we've all worked on for many years is data and verifiability and actors and, understanding who they are and being able to verify that and starting to move towards trustworthy digital supply chains. But actually, all data is an F, is wrangled, is made usable, is visualized, is analyzed in order to make actionable insights and to base decisions on those actionable insights. And so we've shifted right in that value chain. And actually, an interesting thing about AI, for AI value chains versus data value chains, is data value chains start with what questions can I answer from these data? Whereas AI value chains start with, I've got this question, what data do I need to find the answer? And that switch and how it feeds into AI agent workflows, which is, and decision trees and logic and all that kind of thing, is the kind for me, the trust challenge that we're trying to address in this working group. Jim.
It's all right. So the technology in AI obviously is moving fast, very fast. Over, I'll say the last 5 years in terms of availability to, I'll call it the world to start using it. And it's still maturing at just as, I'll call it quick a rate. The adoption obviously has challenges and all that, but there are some lessons learned sort of models, I guess, of the challenges that the world faces. So 30 years ago, I worked on a banking project for Mellon Bank, and we were automating stuff using smart analytics at the time. So it wasn't AI, it wasn't this cool stuff. And the technology was older, obviously. But one of the lead architects for the bank, he accused me, he says, you're doing all this automation stuff and it's wiping out like what the DBA does, what the architect does, what the programmer does. I said, well, yeah, I mean, I said, you've got me all wrong. He said, what do you mean? I said, well, he says, you're trying to kill off, the programmers. I said, no, I'm not. I said, the programmers are just in my way. I'm trying to kill off the end users who are creating all the bad data. So it was a joke, but the reality is, I'll call it the level of automation that's possible today with, the concept of digital twins, Internet of Things, all that other stuff. And then you start putting the intelligence into it. The biggest thing I think I'm going to say is, yes, all of you are hitting on the idea of making what I call conscious decisions about how that should work in theory. The side I'm looking at is really the operational end, which is, okay, so if you're going to hire, quote, agents to do something, whatever that something is as a job description, how are you going to dynamically govern them? That's the question I'm focused on for what it's worth.
Yeah.
That dynamic policy management is such a huge question. I would love to catch up with you offline about that, Jim. I've got some stuff I'm working on, and I'd love to understand what you're working on and see if we can bring that together because interop, which is a key question I'm working on, it starts with conformance against standards, which is relatively easy to check. But proper interoperability at the different levels, technical, semantic, organizational, legal, requires I think a layer at the governance level, the policy level, which includes orchestration, coherence, matching, and negotiation. And I think you can only properly have cross-jurisdictional interop if you've got those components.
I'll throw it out there just as a concept, but everybody talks about orchestration, which is actually, I'll call it a limiting architectural model. Because the second you say orchestration, that means, oh, okay, so I have some what I call conductor concept, and here's the orchestra, and we're in a sense orchestrating how you all work together. Most of that stuff by default moves into what I call not just a centralized infrastructure, you can decentralize the orchestration, but it's the model itself that's sort of the problem in some of my dynamic challenges because you say, oh, wait a minute, that means you have to have a centralized, in a sense, service or a capability, I'll say, is the better way to put it, not infrastructure, but a centralized capability that says, I'm aware of what everybody's doing and I'm going to control, in a sense, dynamically, not dynamically, I'm going to control, in a sense, how everybody operates based on results kind of a thing. When we were doing a stuff for the digital dollar project, we looked at that as a way for decentralized finance systems. And we said, oh, no, 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 we can't assume that. We're going to go with a more dynamic model that says we're looking at what we call dynamic choreography, where, in a sense, the parties all know sort of what their capabilities are and how to operate. But in a sense, they're going to negotiate, in a sense, collectively together and reach consensus on what they need to do for a given situation, as opposed to a more centralized orchestration concept. So I think I'll say the use cases, I think, drive how well orchestration can work, I'll say.
I like that dynamic choreography.
Yeah,
Just
perfect.
Except I'd add to that,
Negotiation is the key. Yeah.
I would add to negotiation. The problem I saw when just implementing RPA years ago was before I got to orchestration and negotiation, I had to have consensus on what's the best process or how do we optimize a process to apply agents and RPA to it. And just getting an organization to agree that there's one true way to do it as the foundation for negotiation and then orchestration was oftentimes a challenge.
Yeah. Well, I've been having discussions with orchestrators and people doing brokerage also. I think that's in there in the mix. I think there's a thin layer, and I've been saying to them, negotiation is the key, and that's the human in the loop. That's the decision point. That's where you need to pop out to the humans. But if you can use, and I've found someone who's already started on this path for ESG, done the coherence, the mapping between, say, governance frameworks and the contextualization with a context broker. And then I think you need, and I've got like workflow that I've mapped for another project where you say, here's what's the same, here are the conflicts, here's the negotiation points, and obviously there's ways in which you can kind of simplify that for people, but I think interoperability means both technical and governance interop, and I think that second point, there's lots of folks working on it, and but bringing the thinking together and thinking, right, is there a new architecture? And maybe that's what Nanda are working on and others, but I, and I'm not technical, but it feels to me like there's something fundamentally different because of the nature of that dynamic and contextual kind of layer, if you like, that's now needed. Not sure if that makes any sense at all.
I mean, what you're saying to me, I mean, I have this vision of the internet of being, it's just bubbling and like agents are just being spin up because I would, from the identity space, you're always thinking persistent, unique. And then there's this, concept of no, they don't need to be persistent, these agents. They may be spun up for specific tasks and then thrown away or whatever. So they need to have a chain of accountability, but they can pop up, do their thing. And so that when you're talking about this dynamic governance and Nikki, what you're talking about, I think of that. Yeah, you have the context that changed. All of a sudden, you have a new agent that has shown up. You have to figure out whether you trust it. You have to decide how you're going to engage with it. And then you complete your transaction. You may go away and not know what happens to that agent. That agent may disappear, but you need a trace of that for, for accountability, for auditability, for liability, for, to be able to evaluate and retune your own agent afterwards. And so to me, I just see it's all just sort of just, all over the place.
Spot on, Eric. Yeah. Never mind. I just drew
But I've written that down. Can you see my screen if I change tabs like here?
Yes.
Or you, right, okay.
Okay.
So this is, I mean, whenever we have these conversations, this is what I'm in my head, just sort of popping around from these different let me try to find this these boxes to boxes, and Neil was talking about, when you're actually exchanging data, how are you sure that that data is being used as it was intended? So and we always start with the purpose in the middle. What is this agent supposed to do? And based on that, then you're going to have to define both broad and specific accountability based on based on their purpose. And then that has to be built into the agent so that when the agent is actually in the world and engaging, it's linked to purpose, it's got accountability built in, and obviously it's got the identity. And after that engagement, you need to be able to evaluate it. And then you pop over to the other, sort of side that says, okay, so for this purpose, there is an intention. We know that it may not be used as was intended, and we want to be able to track that. So we built it for a specific purpose with this intention. Is it being used the same way? If not, how do we tune it? And so that's kind of the basic framework, and it's just a little um, preview of the next Tuesday's meeting. And we've got it to here. Well, okay, builders, start with purpose always in the middle, but then the builders or the service deployers, they need to take into account the purpose, the accountability, the identity as they're building, so that when the actual engagement of the agent takes place, it is, it correlates to all these things, and you can evaluate it based on that. But then again, we know that nothing ever, it's not always going to be used as intended. So we want to have this space over here to say, okay, we're doing what we can to mitigate risk, minimize harm, et cetera, increase productivity, whatever. And so this is what we're intending to do. Is it actually being used that way? Well, let's use all this information here to tune it and then just go back and do that loop. So that's whenever we have these conversations in my head, I'm just sort of popping around and actually filling in all these things, added today, the orchestration in the engagement. All right, in the engagement, how's that happening? Is there brokering going on, negotiation going on, orchestration, et cetera? Is there a human in the loop? And so this goes on, but that's kind of how I sort of just bop around these little boxes when you guys are talking.
And Eric, this is great because I would layer on top of this, and Andor's presentation covers it at the same time. All of these boxes and these pillars are being driven by the fact that there's well over 24 dynamic access control protocols in consideration between RBAC and ABAC and REBAC and so forth and so on, coupled with the fact that you have 12 or so different agent protocols that Google's come up with and IBM's come up with, et cetera, for the protocol layer for communications that then has to be coupled with dynamic allocations of access control to lead to what your pillars represent.
Yes. It's a mess.
It's a mess.
Yeah. So yeah, so I just wanted to show you that as you guys were talking, and that's a little preview again.
And with that being said, I have to drop because I'm the co-chair for the identity lead for the agency project at Linux Foundation, and our meeting's in 2 minutes.
All right. Well, thank you for joining. Always good to have you here, Jim St. Clair.
Thanks, everybody. Good to see y'all.
All right.
Lovely to see you, Jim.
In theory, there's no difference between theory and practice, but in practice there is. Yeah.
Yeah, most of the systems I've ever built that didn't work follow that pattern really well.
All right. 3 more minutes. How do we want to spend it?
A very mundane thing, but when I was uploading the spreadsheet, I noticed we're still a task force under the tech stack working group.
All right.
So we need our own Google Drive, and then we can put our own task forces there.
So
Very mundane.
In the Google Drive?
Yeah, in the G Drive, our folder is still under tech stack working group.
Need to elevate AI into structure level. Okay. All right. Well, that's it, I guess.
Thank you, Eric.
Good
We'll call it
job.
a day. Yeah, thank you guys. Thank you, everybody. Great discussion.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank
Very
you, and thanks for the
Take
model,
care,
Eric.
guys. Bye.
Thanks.
Enjoyed
thanks.
listening. Bye-bye.
See you.